Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sports World Digital Outreach. I'm Elizabeth Gibson, and tonight we will be talking with former pro athlete Lee Rouson. So let's get started. Lee, thanks for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me, Elizabeth. I look forward to these opportunities of conversation and just sharing our hearts and minds and our lives. So let's go.
Yes, absolutely. Why don't we start out by hearing a little bit about your career and your testimony?
Okay, which one you want to hear first, my career or my testimony?
Yeah, let's start with your career.
Okay. Well, it's so interesting because last week, um, January 27th, just 30 years prior to that, I was in Tampa. I was in Tampa with my teammates, getting ready to play in Super Bowl 25. And what time flies, and we won that game. So my career with the football New York Football Giants ended that year, and then I left and went to the Cleveland Browns. But before that Super Bowl, um, my football career started when I was little. I grew up in North Carolina. I love football. I mean, when I came out of my mom, I was like football, and so I just had a natural bent for that particular sport. And but it wasn't the only thing in my life. I've developed my life in many other ways, and I thank God for the vision that He invested in my heart ever since I was little. Um, every role I play in my life is based on my identity in Him. And when I was little, I didn't really know that much, but I had that heart for God, and so I went through Pop Warner. Um, I went through junior high, high school. I played high school ball in Greensboro, North Carolina, and then I was recruited all over the country. I narrowed the teams down to Southern Cal, which was the number one team in the nation at that time. This was like 1979, 1980. Um, Pitt and Colorado, and I chose the University of Colorado, and that was a very challenging experience because before I even left Greensboro, 3 days after I signed my name on the contract, Colorado was put on um, NCAA probation for somebody doing something wrong 13 years prior to that. So, in other words, in 1967, a ball player admitted he took money illegally, and so Colorado was put on probation 13 years later in 1980 because our head coach had just left the New England Patriots. He was the head coach for a pro football team, the New England Patriots, and he left the Patriots in the middle of the playoffs, taking on the head coaching job at the University of Colorado. And the owner said, "I'm gonna get you back." So us young kids, we were caught up in the consequences of choices other people made. So even though I didn't do anything wrong, I still had to face the consequence.
What
And
consequences did you face at the expense of other people's actions?
well, so I turned down Southern Cal, Pitt, North Carolina, all these schools, and I went to Colorado. And even before I left home, we were put on academic probation for 3 years. So that meant we couldn't receive monies to for scholarships and monies to give to the other sports. As a matter of fact, when I went to Colorado, they got rid of the women's all the women's sports were gone. They get rid of the men's baseball team. So
Oh,
everybody
wow.
blamed the football players. Yeah, it was amazing because the revenue comes from the majority of the revenue comes from the football program, especially if you go to when a conference shares the money and you go to a bowl game, everybody shares
Mhm.
in those monies. So we were unable to get those monies for 3 years, and we were unable to recruit quality ball players for 3 years. So the dreams that I put before me, winning a bowl game, becoming the Heisman Trophy winner, having a fun college career in the Wild Wild West, at the University of Colorado. in Boulder, all those dreams became nightmares. And the consequences were, because I chose Colorado and Colorado was found guilty and put on probation. I had I was a part of Colorado, so even though I didn't do anything wrong, I had to face that consequence. And again, I chose to face it because there were other ball players who gave up, who quit. They got caught up in all kind of crazy stuff, crimes and just not going to class. So a lot of guys fell by the wayside. They didn't choose to face that consequence. And I look at it now as the struggle in my life to to be able to be a part of what the Apostle Paul says. He says that the most important thing in my life is the power of God, is Christ, and to know that power,
Mhm.
the power of His death and resurrection, to know the fellowship of His sufferings. I mean, I wasn't thinking like that when I was in college. I didn't want to know any power, any sufferings, anything like that. But I had a heart for God. I didn't consciously know that God had invested His vision in my heart, in my mind, in my life ever since I was a little kid. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that until later on in my life. And it was and that grace kept me going because God had invested his vision in my life. And most of the times I chose to bring value to that vision. It was like, even though I wasn't conscious of it, I knew that God was in my heart, and for the most part, I made choices that benefited my life and others. But and again, I'm not perfect, and I wasn't perfect. I made a lot of choices that didn't benefit my life, and I was very fortunate that while paying those consequences, I didn't give up, and I didn't make a choice that would have ruined my life.
Did you have any times where you possibly considered giving up, and what made you decide not to?
Well, as I shared with everyone listening, there's
Mm.
something when God has invested Himself in you, especially how He sees you. That was the main thing that kept me going. Even though there were people with their words, tried to identify me. You're not going to make it in the NFL. You should have went to Colorado. Um, you didn't even have one 1,000-yard season as a running back at Colorado. You didn't hardly have any touchdowns. By my senior year, people would say, "Lee who?" Now I was famous in high school. I mean, I'm telling you, I was really famous in high school. But at this point, my senior year at Colorado, it was Lee who, and I mean, yes, I mean, in certain moments, I was like, "What's going to happen?" I don't know. I felt like quitting, but I didn't really know what quitting was. I guess I felt it in certain times, but I didn't really know it. I didn't. It wasn't a real knowledge in me for me to do it. So maybe I was just hard headed, or just Jesus hearted or something. And without knowing it, I just kept on going. I had grit. I just, I remember the first Super Bowl in Pasadena at the end of the game when the zeros came on the clock. I will never forget this moment. When those zeros came on the clock, it said Giants 39, Broncos 20. In that moment, I knew that I was a Super Bowl champion. You know why? Because I'm cute. No, I'm just kidding.
Definitely
Because
did.
I because I never gave up. Because I
Mhm.
didn't give up. In that moment, I realized a dream and a goal. Because I had the grit. Because I didn't let all the things all around me define me. I kept moving forward, not knowing what was going to happen.
That is some very good advice because I know a lot of people, especially my age, like I was just having a conversation with my roommate the other day where we were talking about, I wonder if this is actually where we're supposed to be. Are we supposed to be doing something else? And it was like one of those conversations that we've been having with a lot of people my age, and a lot of people are just wondering if they should be doing something else and quitting. And I think that's what you were just saying was very good and very applicable to people my age. Um, so Lee, what was it like? How did you get to where you were on your first pro team with the New York Giants?
Now, can you rephrase that question again?
Sorry. What was your journey like getting
Okay.
to go from your college team to your first pro team with the New York Giants?
That's a good question because it was a difficult journey. I was drafted in the at that time in 1985. Oh, I'm giving away my age now. In 1985, there were 12 rounds in the National Football League draft. There are only 6 rounds now. So I was a eighth round draft pick. And I was fortunate to even be a draft pick. Again, because of the publicity and what was known about me coming out of college. I guess somebody saw something in my heart. Um, I've always been a heart kind of guy, and so I'm drafted by the Giants, and I'm in New York, and all kind of things are going on. The At that time, the league was changing. They went from 56 guys on a roster to 49, and then that year in '85 they went to 45 men. There were a lot of type of business things going on because there was another football league called the United States Football League. They had been taking a lot of the quality ball players from college into their league, and the NFL they were not benefiting from those players. So when that league went down, matter of fact, the team that I was drafted by one of those teams, I was drafted by the New Jersey Generals. Donald Trump owned that team, and my former coach who drafted me to Colorado, who brought me to who gave me a scholarship from Colorado to Colorado, Chuck Fairbanks. He had left Colorado my second year, and he became the head coach at the New Jersey Generals. So that's one of the reasons why they drafted me. I was their number one draft pick, but it didn't mean anything because the league went down. So the Giants drafted me in
Mhm.
the eighth round. And let me share one experience with everybody because it's this is really a tough one. And since the new ruling was only 45 men were going to make the roster, I didn't have a chance to make the team. They drafted a running back in the first round, and they brought two other running backs from the United States Football League. They brought those guys over, so it wasn't looking good for me. I remember about the third day of training camp, I had to call my mama. I was like, "Mama, I might be coming home. I hope you still got my bedroom. I don't think I'm going to make
Mhm.
it. You know, and I mean, I was like just pouring my heart out to my mama. I mean, that's what mamas are for. And she said, "You're gonna be
Oh
all
yeah.
right. Just keep on going." But she told my dad, right? So my dad wrote me a letter. So about 3 days later, I get a letter. I'm in training camp. Like these are 2 days. We were in the hot sun. This is July in upstate New York, and so I began to read the letter. It says, "Son, you can make this New York Giant football team, but first of all, you got to work out in a physical, a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual gymnasium." He said, "Physically, you got to get in pro football shape. You got to keep on working hard so you're ready when the games come." Now, when some of those guys who are going to make the team, because yeah, I heard about what you said to your mother. You don't think you're going to make it. Some of those guys know they're going to make the team. They're probably hanging out in the evenings, going getting a beer and stuff like that. You don't need to be doing that. Don't try to be like everybody else. You need to be just working extra hard and making sure that you're in that kind of physical condition that you're going to be able to make something happen when you get in those preseason games. Since you don't have to, it's your choice to make. He said the mental gymnasium. He said, listen, Lee, it's going to take a little time for you to learn all the plays and what's going on. But take one day at a time and learn them. Strengthen your mind. Develop your mind how you think in the game. You don't have to. It's your choice to make. He said, "Yeah, again, I heard what you what you said to your mother. You don't think people like you. Let me tell you something. But the emotional gymnasium is very important too. You got to feel good about yourself, Lee. Remember when you were little, how you made people feel, your smile, you always were kind, you always treated people a certain kind of way, and people loved your personality. You got to remember that about yourself. You don't have to, it's your choice to make. He said the most important workout that you have is the spiritual. He said because it may take you a while to get in football shape. It may take you a while to get your mind strong. It may take you a while for you to for you to get your have that emotional intelligence, as we say today, you know. But in your spirit, it can happen right now. You can decide in your spirit, in your heart, that you've made this team. I started weeping. I was like, ah! I mean, the tears, it was just coming down. I'm telling you. And I was like, let's go. And that very week, we flew to Colorado, of all places, to play the Denver Broncos. And I was so fired up. Because I was like, I went to school 25 miles right down the street. You didn't say a positive thing about me. You didn't even draft me or anything like that. So I was like, okay, it's like that, huh? And in the first half, I was offsides twice, and the coach blessed me out. Rouson, get out the game. You know, that when the second half started, he was like, Rouson, get in the game right now. We're gonna see what you're gonna do. The first play they called a pass play to me. The quarterback threw the ball behind me. I caught it with one hand, and I made one move and made a 57-yard touchdown. About the whole team on the
That,
Giants. This is a preseason game now. But the whole team ran out off the sideline and jumped all over me in the end zone. That's how electrifying that play was. In that moment, Elizabeth, I knew in my heart that I was going to make the team. I knew it, but I didn't know that my struggle continued. My last preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, um, I get a call from the trainer, and he says, "Listen, Lee, we like you, but we don't have any room for any team. When the fourth quarter comes, what we're gonna do? I'm gonna rub my head like this. I'm gonna on my chest like that. When I give you that signal, you're gonna fall down on the field and act like you broke your knee. We're gonna come on the field with a stretcher. We're gonna put you in the ambulance and take you to the hospital." I was like, "What?" I had no idea that this really happened. I didn't take a course at University of Colorado, falling down on the football field and break your knee one on one. This was presented to me right before the game. And I'm in my locker, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and why were they telling you to do this again?
Do you remember when I told you that only 45 men were going to make the roster? Only 45 men.
Yes. Hmm.
So they had to find a way to keep other ball players. There's only 45 men were going to make the team.
Okay,
So I found out
that makes more.
so if you were so if you were put on injured reserve, you still on the team. And that's what happened to me. To
Mm.
make a long story short, I didn't have to fake the injury. I didn't know what I was going to do, because I still have a
Mhm.
choice, right? I could have been like, man, I'm not doing that. I'm one of the best running backs. You saw that 57-yard touchdown. I'm not doing it. So I'm on the sideline thinking, okay, I'm gonna go for my Academy Award. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, right? Am I gonna break my right knee or my left knee? And I didn't, and then so the trainer runs to me, goes, "You don't have to do it. A football player just got hurt for real." And I was like, "Yeah!" I was like all happy and excited. I was like, "I'm a New York Giant. I'm a New York Giant. Yeah, 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 yeah." I was like so excited. We beat the Steelers. Go in the locker room. The trainer comes with me and says, "Listen, Lee, um, the football player that was hurt, he's going to be okay." You see that door over there? Go behind that door and act like you pulled your hamstring muscle. Do it right now. And in that moment, I made a decision based on fear. And I always give the acronym for fear false evidence appearing real. Fear is not an
Mm.
emotion, it's a spirit. If it's your identity, your choices in the moments of life will be based on how you identify. That's why the word of God says, I don't give you a spirit of fear, says the Lord. I give you a spirit of power, a spirit of love, and a spirit of a sound mind. If you have a spirit of fear, it don't come from me. The fear that I had came from me because on draft day, the Giants didn't call me until 6:30 in the evening. My father flew out to Colorado, and we got up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We went through the whole draft of the whole day, and about 12 o'clock I started getting nervous, and about 3 o'clock I started getting anxious, and the anxiety started building up in me, just like so many young people today. You start getting a certain kind of anxiety and depressed and just all your emotions that they increase, and it starts paralyzing you. And so I said I got to go for a walk. So I went for a walk. And then my roommate, he comes outside after I was out there for a long time, and he goes, "What's up, Rue?" Everybody called me Rue, right? Short for Rouson. He said, "What's up, Rue?" And I lost it. All of the anger and the bitterness and the pain and the frustration that was in my heart from since I was like for the most part 13 years old. That's when my father separated from my mother, and then all the struggles that I went through at the University of Colorado, and then everything, and then my girlfriend let me go that first year, and just everything just all came out. All that just came out, and I was like, "Leave me alone." I should never came to Colorado. They stole my dreams from me. I didn't have any dreams. I only had nightmares. And right now, I don't know what's going to happen. I was just going crazy. So he says, relax. So he pulls out this marijuana joint. He says, hit this marijuana joint right here and everything's going to be all right. So I took one hit of that joint. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was giving up. I said, I don't want no more of this. I'm going back into the apartment to get some of that hope that I was having because I hadn't been living that lifestyle. And I had so much hope for my life. But in that moment, I lost it in that moment. That fear got me. But right when I walked into the apartment, guess what happened? The telephone rung, and I ran to the phone. I picked up, hello, this Lee Rouson. Yes, sir. Who's this? This is Bill Parcells, this is the head football coach for the New York Football Giants. Listen, Lee, we just drafted you in the 8th round. We got an airplane ticket for you at the Denver airport. We want you to pick it up in the morning, fly to LaGuardia. This guy named Vinny Twerk is going to pick you up and bring you over to the Giant Stadium for our 3-day mini camp. Hey, Lee, welcome to the NFL. You see,
Oh, that's
God
a
uses
great
that in
story.
my
That gives me
life.
chills.
Thank you. God uses that in my life to remind me not to identify with fear. False evidence appearing real. I thought I wasn't going to get drafted. That was false evidence appearing real. I got the phone call. Too many of us, we get caught up in the fear too easily. It really taught me a major, major lesson. And when I in the
Yeah.
last day of the training camp, the last day of training, the 3-day camp, and I had a great camp. I ran a 4.4, 40-yard dash. I was catching the balls. They were like, "Who? Look what we got!" And I was ready. I was 225 pounds. I had grew. I had it. This, I had been preparing myself. I was maturing physically and also mentally. And they saw it. They was like, "We got to steal." So Bill Parcells, the head coach, he says after the 3 days, he goes, "Listen," he says, "Walk with me, Lee." So we walk up in Giant Stadium. So I'm in Giant Stadium all by myself with the head coach. And I think I got it going on. I'm like, that's right. I'm the man, right? I'm thinking like that, right? So he walks up, he doesn't say nothing. Then he sits down, and I sit down, and he goes, "What you been doing?" And in that moment, I remembered that I took that one hit. And then I remember when I came from the airport, Vinny Swerk took me to the office, and it's the first time in my whole life I took a drug urinalysis test. I didn't even think anything about it. I didn't, I just, you know, and
Mhm.
so he says, "What you been doing, Lee?" So now I have a choice. I'm either tell the truth or tell a lie. So I was like, and I remember in that moment, I was like, "Oh, they found the marijuana in my urine," but I didn't tell the truth. I lied. I was like, "Coach, I'm just working hard. You saw me out there, go Giants." And he lost it. He stands up and he starts blessing me out. You could be playing 10 years, if not longer, in the NFL, and here you go doing something stupid like this. Lee, I know about you. You haven't been living this lifestyle. What did you do this for?
Mhm.
I said, Coach, you waited to draft me in the eighth round. I didn't think I was going to make it. The fear overcame. He said, now you're being honest. That's what I want to hear. Don't let me. So then at that moment, he showed mercy. He said, don't let me catch you doing this again. He didn't even tell the media. He showed mercy. And so many times, when God shows me mercy, I remember that moment in my life.
Mhm. Wow, that's insane how much one little mistake created by fear could have ruined everything that God had for you. That's
Everything,
insane.
Elizabeth.
Um, yeah, everything. Um, so did you have so I'm assuming everything got cleared up eventually after that and you started to work really hard and all that. Did you have any great moments from being on the New York Giants that you would want to share with us?
Yeah, you can see one of my Super Bowl rings
Which
right
one?
here. See this right here.
Oh,
Let me see if I can get it up there. That's the first one right there. That's Super Bowl 21, and it's the Lombardi Trophy. And I broke a record in that Super Bowl. I had the most all-purpose yards in that Super Bowl, and I helped us win that game. So that was a great moment and a great experience and opportunity towards the dreams and goals of my life, which are more than football, but it's a part of it. And then the next Super Bowl, this one right here, was a different story. I struggled in this Super Bowl because I was a plaintiff in a
mhm,
court case for free agency against the NFL, and I was blackballed that year. I had zero carries. They didn't let me play running back. I was invited to team functions. It was really a rough, rough year, and but it was my opportunity to suffer, with Christ. And I didn't really look at it that way, but again, God's vision was in my heart and mind, so I treated it that way, even though I wasn't like constantly trying to, oh, like the Apostle Paul, to know the fellowship of his sufferings. I didn't really look at it
mhm.
that way, but when I suffered, and I kept going. I didn't give up, and
Do you
I
want
just I just thank God. Excuse me.
yes, continue. It's okay. I'll ask in a sec.
Yes, I was just going to say that I thank God that um, I learned so much through the challenges and the struggles uh, for
Mhm,
those 7 years, 6 years with the New York Giants, and 1 year with Bill Belichick and the Cleveland Browns. I learned so much as far as how to live life. God taught me so much from everything that I went through, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the happy, the sad. And, just to be fortunate to be a part of two world championship Super Bowl teams, to have that camaraderie, that fellowship, that I have friendships that right now because of that. And it's just wonderful.
mhm. If you could go back and give your younger self in that time period any advice, what would you give him?
I would say In Philippians, the second chapter, the Apostle Paul talks about Jesus. And he
Mhm.
says, Jesus thought no thing of himself, only truly of himself. And of course, that's a certain translation. But I believe that translation communicates to whoever is listening right now, may the ear of your heart hear these words. When the Apostle Paul is describing Jesus, I would tell my younger self, Lee, look, Jesus, he thought nothing of himself, only truly of himself. He didn't think anything like 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 anything grand about himself, and he didn't think anything low about himself. He didn't let other people define him. He didn't let the good things or the bad things define him because he was just who he was, a child of the Most High God. Jesus was the Son of Man and the Son of God. And that's who you are, Lee. You are the Son of God. You are a son of God, a child, a servant of the Most High, capital L, capital O, capital R, and capital D. So walk in your true, just be truly who you are. Don't try to be something, don't try to be, and don't be nothing. Just be who you are. If I was able to communicate that to my younger self, and I think if any like young people who are listening right now, you got to hear this. In every Hollywood movie, the number one line is, "Who are you?" It's presented to you every day. And when we learn how to converge the choice of our identity, our true identity, the noun, the person Christ, the place, our mind, the thing, our character, every day we construct that mind, that we construct our character. We continue to learn Christ. And as that converges with the verb part, in other words, when we we act like it, when we become it, that convergence of the noun and verb of our identity, it brings us to a purpose-driven life. We find God's purpose and it drives us. And we don't and many times we're not driven by our own purpose, which
That's
again, our vision of that is not God's vision of our life.
mhm. Absolutely. That's some very good advice. It looks like we have a question from one of our viewers.
Okay.
How would you
Okay.
combat depression practically?
Would you repeat that question?
Yes, of course. How would you combat depression practically?
Oh wow.
Hmm.
When you mark down what God says to you, the words of God, like for example, here's a practical thing. Write down, so like say you're reading the word in the morning, you have a devotion time, and you're reading a scripture or you read some devotion, someone is sharing something with you. Okay, then whatever you're hearing God say to you, and you should practice this every day. Mark it down, write it down. Because when you write it down what God says to you, that's when you begin to see his vision for your life. And when you mark and then when you begin to see and know God's vision for your life, then then it lifts you up. You don't become depressed. You're lifted up. And you're lifted up in how you see yourself and how you see life. And then you're able to bring value every day to God's vision for your life. You're able to bring that value. You you see how valuable you are. You see how valuable others around you are. You see how valuable, again, when you wait on the Lord, you see how valuable it is to know God's love, that is patient, that is kind, that is not boastful, it's not proud. It rejoices in the truth. You begin to know God's love rather than the world's love or some other kind of love that lets you down. And then you may say, well, okay, well, this has not happened for me, but you're not going to look at it like, okay, well, God let you down because he doesn't love you. Because God's love for you is not the same as a person's love for you. And you can only
Absolutely.
experience what it is yourself. So practice
Mhm.
marking
I
down what God says to you.
That is some very good advice. Um, I also know that you have worked for Sports World for quite some time. Um,
Yes.
doesn't Sports World have some resources that we can offer people that are watching that can help them if they're struggling with depression or anxiety or anything?
Yes. There is an organization, and I wish I could type it in, for us. Maybe at the end of the show we can provide that form. Um,
Oh,
there you
there it
go.
is.
That's good. And it's a group of individuals who just know how to listen. You can text them, you can text to them, and just share your heart, what's going on. See, a lot of people trying to tell you how to live your life and try to do things, but these people are experts they're masters at listening to you, hearing what you're saying, and then their response, I'm sure, is some type of again bringing value to God's vision for their life. They might not even know it. They might not even know what they're saying, but I believe their hearts are so right that their advice really touches many people's lives who would text in and share what's going on in their life.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are watching and you want to screenshot that, you can screenshot it, write it down. We're also going to pull it up again at the end. Um, so, Lee, have you ever gone through anything in your life that has caused you to struggle with depression or anxiety or anything like that?
Yeah, just like I was sharing with you, it was a struggle being a backup running back in the NFL.
Mhm.
And again, when I became a plaintiff in a court case for free agency, I was blackballed. So that was really tough. And I was
Would you
depressed
mind
but didn't know it.
expanding would you
Excuse
mind
me.
expanding on that situation a little
Yeah. So in 1989, I was asked by the Players Association to become a plaintiff and fight to change the system in the NFL. And so I agreed to become a plaintiff. It was 10 guys. Only four of us won, but it changed the entire system of the National Football League.
bit? How so?
And well, the NFL system, like the draft system, like for example, I shared with you there were 12 rounds my rookie year in 1985. So and it wasn't as many football teams as there are now in the NFL. Um, so you have only X amount of ball players on each team. And for many years there was no movement. If you was drafted by a team, they owned you. You couldn't move, you couldn't play for anybody else because there was a collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners. As long as there was a collective bargaining agreement, the draft was legal. But outside of collective bargaining, the draft was illegal according to the antitrust laws of America. Because in America, you're able to, whether you're a man or woman, you're able to work for any person who choose to work for. But football players didn't have that choice. You couldn't work for who you wanted to work for. You were drafted. It was like a slave system. You were drafted
Mhm.
and you were owned, and that was it. Unless they traded you and let you go. So I'm a freedom fighter. Um, I decided to fight for the freedom. and I won along with three other guys in 1993 with a landmark case. Um, Everything began to change in the National Football League. And
Wow.
I mean, my whole life has been like that. I was the first black African American football player when I was 12 years old, and 10 years old in 1972 in Greensboro, North Carolina, to make a Part One football team.
Oh,
And
wow.
from that point, everything changed.
Mhm,
So, like I said, God invested Himself in me, and has been using me throughout my life, no matter where I step.
mhm. So when you were going through that time with the trials, you said you were going through some depression and anxiety. How
Yes.
did you get through that?
Well, I was a double-minded hypocrite.
Mhm,
I went to chapel before every game. I went to Bible study, but I would leave Bible study and go, and those teammates who went to Bible study, I would leave those guys, and I would go hang out with the other guys who were hanging out in the clubs.
mm,
That's how I dealt with it. I knew better. I was saved. Like I was saved my freshman year at the University of Colorado. When I was in Colorado Springs, my first summer,
mhm,
um, this 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 older gentleman, he presented the gospel to me, and I received Christ as my savior, but he wasn't my Lord. I wasn't surrendered to him.
mm,
I knew I was saved, but you know, again, a lot of people, I believe, take this particular path. They believe in Jesus. They call themselves Christians, but is he the Lord of their life? Jesus from 1981, he was my savior, but he wasn't my Lord. I was
mhm.
I was in and so that's one reason why I believe I was depressed a lot because um I didn't know who I was fully and I wasn't walking in it. And the things that were happening to me depressed me. I would get caught up in it. I would just, you know, and living a lifestyle, all the guys around me trying to be like them, not being who I am. And I know that I'm not trying to play counselor here, for anyone who's listening and you going through depression, but if I can just serve as a mentor in these moments right now, listen to what I'm saying. There are reasons why we get depressed. And it's not because of the things that's going on in our lives. It's mainly because we fail to know and to be who we truly are. I was walking in a false identity. I was living in a false
Mhm.
identity. I wasn't being the Christian that I chose to be my freshman year in 1981 at Colorado, University of Colorado. I was trying to be somebody who I wasn't. And it wasn't
So
working out for me.
what changed in
What
you that made
changed,
you decide to become the person that you were trying to be?
but God was after me. Can you hear that?
Mhm.
God was after me. I'm not even I shared with everybody. I said that ever since I was little, God had invested his vision in my life. I didn't know it. But every time I would go to FCA camp, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, every time I would go to Athletes in Action, every time I would go to chapel, every time I would go to church, and every time I would like somebody would get me and start praying. My grandma, my mom would say, "We praying for you. Pray with me, son." Every time I thought about God, it was like God multiplied his investment in me in some way. The investment of himself that was in me grew in some type of exponential way. And I knew it, but I didn't know it. And God just kept after me. So I'm sitting in the front of the bus in 1984 in an all-star game. And now I shouldn't even be in this all-star game because I didn't have the numbers, I didn't have the publicity, but I'm in this game. God put me in this game. But I'm struggling with my identity. I'm like, nobody's interviewing me. What am I doing here? So I realized for the first time in my life that I didn't know who I was, because if you would have asked me who are you in middle school, I would have said I'm black. My father was a bodyguard for Malcolm X. I grew up in a rich black history in America. I was there when Malcolm X was killed. I was in the Audubon ballroom. I was there. I grew up in the civil rights movement. My father was big time in civil rights, fighting. I'm black and I'm beautiful. I'm black and I'm proud. So in middle school, somebody would say, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm black. I'm black and I'm beautiful. I'm black and I'm proud." But I knew that wasn't my full identity. Somehow I knew it because I began to see there was more than one kind of black. There was a fearful black. People got in my face. Yo, Lee, man, you're not going to make it in the NFL. The white man going to keep you down. Black. So I was like, yo, I don't want to be that kind of black. And then there was the bougie black, the blacks that thought they were better than other blacks. And then there was the blacks who wanted to be white. So which black should I be? Because most people want you to be what they think that you are. Aren't you black, Lee? Yeah,
Mhm.
and you went to Boulder, Colorado. You went to all like predominantly all white school. Why you go to that school for? How come you didn't go to a school where more black people? You trying to be white? And when I give my testimony, sometimes I go, I'm a child of God. Who I am is not a black or African American. That's a part of who I am. That's my nationality. That is a major part of who I am, but it's not the foundation. It's not the power source that I plug into to live my life every day. My identity is not my nationality. It's not my occupation, what I do. It's not my reputation, my brand. But all those things are a part of who I am. My nationality, my occupation, my brand, they're all a part. But who I am, the very the very rock, the very knowledge of Christ, the power and authority of God, I stand upon that. That's my power source. That's everything that I build my life upon. Now, I'm sitting on the
Oh,
bus
yeah.
realizing I have no idea who I am, because if somebody would say, "Yo, man, who are you?" And for me to say I was black, that wasn't working. Or, man, I'm Lee Rouson, don't you know, man? Because in high school, somebody said, "Who are you?" I was like, "Man, I'm Lee Rouson. I'm one of the top 5 running backs in America. I'm flying on airplanes, man, in
Mm.
LA, man. You know, Colorado wants me pit, man. People want to give my parents houses and cars and money if I go to these school. I'm famous. Everybody says I'm going to be rich one day." But that wasn't happening. I realized that if somebody would say, "Who are you?" I would have said, "Man, I'm Lee Rouson." So neither one of those identities was working on a bus that day in Montgomery, Alabama, the first day getting ready to play in that All-Star game. So I go to practice realizing I don't know who I am. And see, again, God is after me. So he humbled me right there, because I was like, okay, I don't know who I am, but I'm not giving up. Get back on the bus, go back to the hotel. There's this guy sitting beside me. I'm looking at him. He was just different than everybody. And I was like, man, who's this dude? So I was like, "Excuse me, bro, who are you?" He looks at me. He says, "I am the best wide receiver in the NFL. My name is Jerry Rice. I'm from Mississippi." And I was like, "Whatever." I, and I didn't even, normally you ask somebody who they are, they say their name. But he didn't say I'm Jerry Rice. He didn't say I'm black, or I'm chocolate, or I'm African American. He didn't say I'm a football player. He said I am the best wide receiver in the NFL. And we weren't in the NFL yet. The NFL draft was 4 months later. This was a week before Christmas, 1984. In 1985, he was the number one pick for the San Francisco 49ers. And then 20 years later, he retired as the all-time best wide receiver in most categories ever in the National Football League. And I tell kids all the
Oh,
time,
wow.
you see, he decided who he was before he was. You see, that's what God does for us. He gives us a receipt of his love and his power. He gives us a receipt of his vision. We can have it in us right now. He says, now you can cash in on it later because you're going to become it. You see, a lot of us we don't want to go through the process. We don't want to work. We don't want to go through that. We just want to, I want to be it right now. Our identity is not a place. It's an adventure. It's a life journey. Every day we become. Too many of us, we decide identities that are limiting. We decide identities based on our gender, based on our nationality, based on our occupations, and it's very limiting. And then people would criticize me and say, "Oh, you one of them Jesus freaks. You one of them people who are one of them Christians love God. That's so limiting." No, it's not. Not when you really love God. And if you're a double-minded hypocrite, yes, it is limiting. If you just a religious person, you got that right. I agree with them. But when you know who you truly are, that you are a child of the King. I'm not talking about Elvis or Michael Jackson or LeBron James. I'm talking about Jesus Christ. When you are a child of the King, there is what an adventure. You can live 100 lifetimes and not ever fully become who you are. That's how amazingly awesome and vast and that identity is. So that day God was after me. He said, Lee, who are you? And I didn't know. So 10 years later, that was 1984. And 10 years, 1994, I'm going to lose my wife, my kids, everything that I worked for because I retired in 1992 from NFL, and I was trying to do all the kind of things. And again, my strength was my God. The strength of my name, Lee Rouson, who played for the New York Giants. I was trying to use that, you know, to get ahead, but it didn't work. And so one night, that anger came out of me again, that frustration. This one guy started cursing me out on my street, and I was going to go kill him. And when I went to grab him, something moved in the front seat of his truck. It was two little bitty kids. They had to be about 2 or 3 years old. When I looked into their eyes, when I looked into their four blue eyes, I heard God say, Lee, come home right now. If you don't come home right now, I'm going to take my hands off of you. I'm going to let you do what you want to do.
Mm.
I'm going to let you be who you want to be. I'm just going to just take my hands off of you and let you go. And I was like, in my own words, Lord, don't take your hands off of me. I was like when my grandmother told me that. She said, boy, you better get over here right now and get this whipping. You don't want me to take my hands off of you. When I would get in trouble, I love my grandmother, right? I love my grandma. And I'm gonna tell you, so I remember she said, you better get over here right now and get this spanking, this whipping right now. You don't want me to take my hands off of you. I was like, don't take your hands off of me, grandma. I'll go over there and get that whipping because my grandmother loved me. I knew that she loved me.
Mhm.
And so that evening, that night, it was October 31st, 1994. I realized for the first time in my life that God loved me. He used my grandmother, and He used everything in my life
Mhm.
to bring me to that place to realize that He loves me. And He says, Lee, now love me back. It's called a relationship, not religion. And that's really
So
what did it
after
right there.
you,
That's
no, continue. I'll ask in a sec.
now I'm saying that's what changed everything.
So after that moment where you decided to devote yourself to Christ again, how did you see your life change from that moment?
Oh, everything changed. Everything, and again, it wasn't so much that I devoted my life again. The first time I received Him as I looked to Him and I was saved. That's what the Word of God says. God says,
Mhm.
"Look unto me and be saved." Just look,
Yes.
and I did. I looked to Jesus and I believed, and I was saved. But it's more than just being saved.
Mhm.
Then He says, "Follow me." If you're going to be my follower, stop thinking about yourself and what you want, but be willing to carry the cross given you for following me. It's about becoming His friend.
Mhm.
It's about God seeing Himself in us so He can take the faith that He sees in us and He can make us right with Him. That's
Mhm.
what started happening. I began to have that faith. I began to fix my eyes on the power and authority of God on Christ. And God began to change everything in my life. That's when a couple of months later, because this was October, like in 19, so a couple of months later in December, I get a phone call from one of my former coaches at the University of Colorado, Sam Sample. He says, Lee, I just became the new director for Sports World. They were based in Tazewell, Tennessee at the time. Not They weren't in Indianapolis. And he goes, we're sending like former pro football players in the school to share the message of hope. He said, we got a meeting in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They ain't too far from you, man. You can drive right over here and meet with me and meet everybody. They can meet you. And it was all over then. So that was 1995. And I took this one guy's place. His name is Harry Flaherty. He left Sports World. He became the head director for the state of New Jersey for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And then I took his place at Sports World. And then so I've been there ever since then, ever since 1995. And I became a contract pro. I went and got my degree in business, and I went and got an MBA, and it was mainly for the discipline. I needed the discipline because I got used to at that point in my life. I got used to being a disciple of Christ, following Him and learning Him and doing what He says over and over and over again, and and making disciples of men and women and other people. And so that's been the journey for the last almost 30 years.
Yeah, that that is amazing. Well, I think that that is a great place to wrap things up. Thank you to
Okay.
everyone for joining us, and thank you, Lee, for answering all of my questions and all of the audience's questions. If you have any, if anyone has any further questions about anything you heard tonight, or would like to learn more about Christ, please feel free to email us at mydecision@sportsworld.org, and we would love to open a dialogue with you there. We also have a helpline for any of you who are struggling with depression or other issues. To reach us there, you can text CHOICE to 494949. It's at the bottom of the screen, so put it in your phone, take a screenshot, and reach out to us. Thanks again, Lee, and have a wonderful night, everyone.